Preview. The 30 Best Movies of 1990, a truly exceptional year. To say that 1990 was an important year for pop culture would be an understatement. It was the year Twin Peaks premiered on ABC TV with a 21.7 rating, and it was viewed by 34.6 million people. MTV's Unplugged was broadcast for the first time. Will Smith entered America's living room with Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and Cheers was still the number one show with Roseanne not far behind in ratings. Nintendo released Super Mario Bros. 3 in North America, arguably the best video game of the 8-bit generation, and later that year the company released the Super Famicom in Japan, easily the best video game system of the decade. MC Hammer was teaching kids how to dance, Paula Abdul was tearing up the Billboard chart, and Milli Vanilli was busy making millions by stealing other people's music. Oh yeah, it so happened to be the same year that Tim Berners-Lee created the first web server and the foundation for the World Wide Web. 1990 was also a truly remarkable year for movies. David Lynch's Wild at Heart won the Palme d'Or, Kevin Costner's Dance with Wolves won the Academy Award for Best Picture, and Julia Roberts, Patrick Swayze, and Macaulay Culkin became the biggest stars on the planet thanks to 3 movies that shattered box office records. By the time it had run its course in theaters, Home Alone was the 3rd highest grossing film of all time worldwide, while Pretty Woman became Disney's highest grossing R-rated release ever. But it was Jerry Zucker's Ghost that became the unexpected biggest hit of 1990s, grossing over $505.83 million on a budget of $22 million. 1990 also gave us what is arguably Martin Scorsese's best movie, Goodfellas, 2 of the best comic books movies ever made, Dick Tracy and Darkman, and a slew of great horror films. It was also the year that introduced me to plenty of international filmmakers such as Wong Kar-wai, Abbas Kiarostami, and Luc Besson, to name a few. Kiki's Delivery Service, director Hayao Miyazaki. I was feeling blue, but I'm better now. A young witch in her mandatory year of independent life finds fitting into a new community difficult while she supports herself by running an air courier service. Home Alone, director Christopher Columbus, a family comedy without the family. An 8-year-old troublemaker must protect his house from a pair of burglars when he is accidentally left alone by his family during Chris's vacation. Gremlins 2, The New Batch, director Joey Dante. We warned you, remember the rules, you didn't listen. The Gremlins are back, and this time they're taking control of New York City media mogul's high-tech skyscraper. Jacob's Ladder, director Adrian Lyne. The most frightening thing about Jacob Singer's nightmare is that he isn't dreaming. Mourning his dead child, a haunted Vietnam War veteran attempts to uncover his past while suffering from a severe case of dissociation. To do so, he must decipher reality and life from his own dreams, delusions, and perceptions of death. Dances with Wolves, director Kevin Costner. Inside everyone is a frontier waiting to be discovered. Lieutenant John Dunbar, assigned to a remote Western Civil War outpost, befriends wolves and Indians, making him an intolerable aberration in the military. White Hunter, Blackheart, director Clint Eastwood, an adventure and obsession, a thinly fictionalized account of a legendary movie director whose desire to hunt down an animal turns into a grim situation with his movie crew in Africa. The Reflecting Skin, director Philip Ridley. Sometimes terrible things happen quite naturally. In the 1950s, a young boy living with his troublesome family in rural USA fantasizes that a neighboring widow is actually a vampire responsible for a number of disappearances in the area. Tremors director Ron Underwood. They say there's nothing new under the sun but under the ground. Natives of a small isolated town defend themselves against strange underground creatures, which are killing them one by one. Pump Up the Volume, director Alan Moyle, the voice of a generation. Mark runs a pirate radio station that causes an uproar when he speaks his mind and enthralls fellow teens. Misery, director Rob Reiner, Paul Sheldon uses to write for a living. Now he's writing to stay alive. After a famous author is rescued from a car crash by a fan of his novels, he comes to realize that the care he's receiving is only the beginning of a nightmare of captivity and abuse. Days of Being Wild, director Wong Kar-wai, a man tries to find out who his real mother is after the woman who raised him tells him the truth. To Sleep with Anger, director Charles Burnett, when Harry comes to town, he brings good times and bad times and a lot of trouble. A charismatic old acquaintance drips into town, stirring up trouble for a wild manor family. Crybaby, director John Waters, too young to be square, too tough to be shocked, too late to be saved. In 1950s Baltimore, a bad boy with a heart of gold wins the love of a good girl whose boyfriend sets out for revenge. Hardware director Richard Stanley, You Can't Stop Progress. The head of a cyborg reactivates, rebuilds itself, and goes on a violent rampage in a space marine's girlfriend's apartment. Wild at Heart, director David Lynch, a love story, young lovers Sailor and Lula run for the variety of weirdos that Lula's mom has hired to kill Sailor. After Dark, My Sweet, director James Foley, seduced beyond the limits of deception, betrayed beyond the limits of desire. An ex-boxer is drifting around after escaping from the mental hospital. He meets a widow who convinces him to help fix up the neglected estate her ex-husband left. Her uncle talks them both into helping kidnap a rich boy for ransom money, and the ex-fighter must make decisions about his loyalties and what is right. Miller's Crossing, director Joel and Ethan Coen. Up is down, black is white, and nothing is what it seems. Tom Regan, an advisor to Prohibition-era crime boss, tries to keep the peace between warring mobs but gets caught in divided loyalties. Metropolitan, director Whit Stillman. Finally, a film about the downworthy mobile. A group of young upper-class Manhattanites are blithely passing through the gala debutante season when an unusual outsider joins them and stirs them up. Total Recall, director Paul Verhoeven. What would you do if someone stole your mind? When a man goes for virtual vacation memories of the planet Mars, an unexpected and harrowing series of events forces him to go to the planet for real. Darkman, director Sam Raimi. Now crime has a new enemy and justice has a new face. A brilliant scientist left for dead returns to exact revenge on the people who burned him alive. Paris is Burning, director Jenny Livingston. Having a Ball, Wish You Were Here, a chronicle of New York's drag scene in the 1980s, focusing on balls, voguing, and the ambitions and dreams of those who gave the era its warmth and vitality. King of New York, director Abel Ferrara. Where Scarface left off, King of New York begins. A drug kingpin is released from prison and seeks to take total control of the criminal underworld in order to give back to the community. Santa Sangre, director Alejandro Jodorowsky. Forget everything you have ever seen. A former circus artist escapes from a mental hospital to rejoin his armless mother, the leader of a strange religious cult, and is forced to enact brutal murders in her name as he becomes her arms. The Killer, director John Woo. One vicious hitman, one fierce cop, 10,000 bullets. A delusioned assassin accepts one last hit in hopes of using his earnings to restore vision to a singer he accidentally blinded, only to be double-crossed by his boss. Edward Scissorhands, director Tim Burton. The story of an uncommonly gentle man, an artificial man who was incompletely constructed and has scissors for hands, leads a solitary life. Then one day a suburban lady meets him and introduces him to her world. The Exorcist 3, director William Peter Blatty. Do you dare walk these steps again? A police lieutenant uncovers more than he bargained for as his investigation of a series of murders, which have all the hallmarks of the deceased Gemini serial killer, leads him to question the patience of a psychiatric ward. Close-up, director Abbas Kiarostami. The true story of Hossein Sabzian that impersonated the director Moshe McMalbath to convince a family they would star in his so-called new film. Nikita director Luke Besson, a new kind of lethal weapon, convinced felon Nikita, instead of going to jail, is giving a new identity and trained stylishly as a top secret spy assassin. The cook, the thief, his wife, and her lover, director Peter Greenaway, Last Murder, Dessert, Bon Appetit. The wife of an abusive criminal finds solace in the arms of a kind regular guest in her husband's restaurant. Goodfellas director Martin Scorsese, 3 decades of life in the mafia, the story of Henry Hill and his life in the mob, covering his relationship with his wife, Karen Hill, and his mob partners, Jimmy Conway and Timmy DeVito, in the Italian-American crime syndicate.